This is a battlefront. A battlefront like no other in the long history of mankind's wars. This is an air front. The working day begins, as it will end, with the ground crews, as much a part of the fortress as her wings. If you're a mechanic, you've got your own bomber. You get attached to it. But you know when your ship goes out on a mission, you may never see it again. So you do your work as well as it can be done, perfectly, because you wouldn't want anything to go wrong that would be your fault. Today, the bombs will be taken from these bomb dumps somewhere in England and delivered to specific points in Wilhelmshaven, Germany. To deliver them is the job of the 8th Bomber Command, just a hauling job, yet one of the most difficult and complicated of military operations. General purpose demolition bombs, impact velocity as high as 750 miles an hour, pierce 5 inches of armor plate, destroy a factory. Briefing at 0800. Pilots, bombardiers, and navigators take their places. The group commander, Colonel Stanley Ray, steps up to the target map, and for the first time you learn where you're going. Sometimes your face turns white when you find out. Sometimes the feeling you won't come back tightens your insides. Not so long ago, you were sitting like this in a college or high school classroom, not listening too hard, perhaps even a little sleepy. But you listen here. And as you listen, you don't have time to think of yourself. Fear fades. You concentrate on the mission, type of formation, assembly point, 0 hour, route to target, weather, enemy fighters, enemy flak, route back home. If forced down in enemy territory, destroy equipment. If taken prisoner, give no information. Name, rank, and serial number. That's all. These are the passengers with one-way tickets. And this is the crew of the Memphis Belle, 324th Squadron, 91st Heavy Bombardment Group. Just one plane and one crew in one squadron, in one group, of one wing, of one Air Force, out of 15 United States Army Air Forces. Well, fellas, we've never had an easy ride over there yet. And today won't be any different. No escort except unfriendly. So keep your eyes peeled. Don't get excited and yell when you're talking on the intercom. Save your ammunition and make your shots count. And let me know what goes on back there, Quinlan. Yes, sir. Stay on the ball, gang, and she'll bring us back like she's always done. Okay? Let's go. They have completed 24 missions. In this, the toughest theater of air war, the big league of sky fighting. Their experience is priceless. And so, if the Memphis Belle comes back this afternoon, they will be sent to bring the vital lessons they have learned to thousands of air crew men in training at home. Home is America. This is a battlefront, like no other in this or any war. No monster armies, no booming cannon. Only the roaring engine sound of the bombers pounding through the quiet English countryside. This is an air front. Of the Memphis Belle leave the Soiland for the 25th time. The friendly soil of England, with its ordered farms and rural hamlets, its country estates surrounded by formal gardens and well-kept parks. These Americans knew only from the classics they had to read in school. The England of the towns and cities, whose people have defended their island's freedom for over 1,000 years. But today, their countryside has changed. Today, their island has been converted into a gigantic bomber field, a super aircraft carrier anchored off the shores of Fortress Europe, with hangars and machine shops, with hundreds of dispersal points, perimeter tracks, and concrete runways. This is England in its 5th year of war. And this is the new battlefront, the air front, from which we seek out the enemy. Not his infantry or his artillery, not his panzer divisions, but the greater menace, the industrial heart of his nation, the foundation on which the Nazi Empire and its armies stand, the power behind the German lust for conquest. The steel mills and refineries, shipyards and submarine pens, factories and munitions plants, pinpoints on the map of Europe which mean rubber, guns, ball bearings, shells, engines, planes, tanks, targets. Targets to be destroyed. And these are the destroyers, each with a belly full of bombs, and 10 men like the crew of the Memphis Belle. Pilot Captain Robert Morgan, industrial engineer from Asheville, North Carolina. He's flown this ship across the Atlantic. The other pilot, Captain Jim Verinis, business administration student at the University of Connecticut. Radio operator and gunner, Sergeant Bob Hansen, construction worker from Spokane, Washington. Navigator, Captain Chuck Layton, chemistry student at Ohio Wesleyan. Engineer and top turret gunner, Sergeant Harold Locke from Green Bay, Wisconsin. Used to be a stevedore. Besides keeping the bill in order, he covers the sky above. Tail gunner, Sergeant John Quinlan of Yonkers, New York. Clerked for a carpet company, but he quit December 8, 1941. Ball turret gunner, Sergeant Cecil Scott. Pressman for a rubber company in Rahway, New Jersey. Pilot to crew, 10,000, put on oxygen. They're climbing higher now, 300 feet a minute. The strain on the planes and on the men is mounting. The rest of the crew, Bombardier Captain Vincent Evans, operated a fleet of trucks in Fort Worth, Texas. Waist gunners, on the right, Sergeant Bill Winchell, chemist for a paint company in Chicago. And on the left, Sergeant Tony Nastal, used to repair washing machines in Detroit when he was a kid. Now he's 19 and has 2 Nazi fighters, confirmed. It takes all of a pilot's strength to keep a 30-ton fortress in tight formation. But the formation is the bomber's best defense against enemy fighters. The planes are deployed to uncover every gun, stepped up and down, echelon to the right and left, arranged to overcome the danger of gunners firing into friendly ships, arranged so concentrated cones of fire from the caliber 50 machine guns cover the sky for 1,000 yards in every direction. The friendly coast of England slips by below. It doesn't look like much now, but in a few hours when you come back, if you come back, this will be the most beautiful view in the world. Higher and higher, climbing to reach your best operational altitude, 25,000 feet, 5 miles straight up. So high you can't be seen from the ground with the naked eye. So high that after 1 minute without oxygen, you lose consciousness. After 20 minutes, you're dead. From now to the target, you go about your routine duties, plot your course, check your equipment, and wait, and think. Higher and colder. Temperature, 40 degrees, below zero. Take off your glove and you lose some fingers. You look out at the strange world beyond, reflections in plexiglass, like nothing you ever saw before, outside of a dream. Higher and higher into the lifeless stratosphere, until the exhaust of the engines mixing with the cold, thin air condenses and streams the heavens with vapor trails. They're far from beautiful, for they point like beckoning fingers to the formation, signposts in the sky for the enemy to spot us. For these bombers to accomplish their mission, a plan is needed. Carefully worked out, timed to the minute. The job is to bomb Wilhelmshaven effectively and economically. The enemy is strong, skillful, determined to stop us. Here are his defenses. Airdromes, well dispersed. Each plane indicates a stopo, or squadron of fighters. Heavy anti-aircraft, highly trained and accurate, all along the coast and defending his vital installations. Radar to warn him of our coming. Here is our plan to divide his defenses and weaken his opposition. At 13:30 hours, shortly after takeoff, 6 groups of planes will be heading toward the enemy coast from 6 directions. The Blue Force, 100 B-24 Liberator 4-engine bombers. The White Force, 300 B-17 Flying Fortresses. The Green Force, 300 B-17s with an escort of 6 squadrons of P-47 Thunderbolts. A force of B-26 Marauders, twin-engine medium bombers, with 6 squadrons of RAF Spitfires escorting. Almost 1,000 planes and over 8,000 men in the air. The enemy alerts all his airdromes. But which is our main force? What are our targets? Where should the Nazi controllers send their fighters? It's our job to make them guess, and guess wrong. A half hour later, at 1400 hours, the Blue Force will be heading east across the North Sea, with the White Force following. These enemy fighters are tied down, waiting to meet them, and will not be able to attack the Green Force. These fighters must come up to attack the Green Force, and thus will be no threat to the Blue and White Forces. The B-26s and Spitfires will bomb and strafe a key rail junction, diverting these 6 Staffeln and preventing the enemy from concentrating too many fighters on the Green Force, which is scheduled to bomb an aircraft factory at Hanover. At 1430 hours, the Blue Force will threaten this entire coastal area of northwestern Germany. Which target will it be? Flensburg? The Kiel Canal? Or will it turn suddenly and bomb Hamburg, Vegesack, or Emden? Actually, it carries no bombs at all. It's a decoy and keeps the fighters from the northern area busy while the White Force, the main effort, heads for the submarine pens of Wilhelmshaven. At 1500 hours, while the White Force is over its target, only a fraction of the available German fighter strength of the area can intercept it. Because of the Blue Force diversion and the simultaneous bombing of Hanover by the Green Force. This is the plan of battle for today, drawn up by the Combined Operations Planning Committee and approved by the Commanding General. The White Force, lead group, low squadron. We've crossed the invisible line of enemy radar. The Hun is expecting us. Steel helmets go on. Watchful eyes strain. Tight formations are held tighter still. Tense gunners more alert because here it comes. The enemy coast. From up here, it looks the same as any other. Houses, roads, green fields, factories, waterways. But they are the houses and fields of those who invade and oppress. They are the factories and roads of the people who twice in one generation have flooded the world with suffering. Suffering in such quantity as the history of the human race has never known. Brought torment and anguish into countless American homes. Gold stars and telegrams from the War Department. The first flak, just harmless-looking, silent puffs of smoke. Only each puff is a shell exploding, throwing shrapnel around the sky. Exactly the range, accurate flak by radio prediction. 5 miles down, Nazi anti-aircraft batteries have calculated the altitude, speed, and course. Where will the next one hit? You try not to be there. The docks and submarine pens of Wilhelmshaven. Approach to the target starts. No smoke screen can protect it. Now the enemy knows the path of your approach and walls that path with a flak barrage, but you fly right through it. Flak so thick you can get out and walk on it. Morgan changes course every 15 seconds, evasive action to confuse the flak batteries. Bomb sight set for correct altitude and speed. Bomb bay doors open. The bombing run begins. Pilot to bombardier. Okay, Vin, you've got it. Now Evans flies the Memphis Belle, controlling it through the bomb sight. And now we are most vulnerable. Committed to our bombing run, we can't dodge flak or fighters. Here's the first. Top turret fires at him. Evans must ignore the battle. Crosshairs lined up on target. Adjustments for wind drift made. 2 more fighters diving from 9 o'clock. Flak now has the range too. They've hit this fort, but he keeps on his bombing run. As lead bombardier, Evans's aim must be good. Every other ship in the group will drop its bombs when he drops his. Now, one pointer on the bomb site moves toward another stationary pointer. The instant they touch, bombs will release. They touch. Bombs away. The first half of the mission is over, the easy half. Now to get home. The flak stops. That means fighters out there somewhere. A staffel lurking behind that cloud, or hiding up in the sun where the glare blinds you, and you can't see them, waiting to dive down on you. Fighters at 6 o'clock. This is what a gunner sees. A speck in the sky. That's a fighter. And then a blink. That means he's firing at you. 2,300 rounds a minute. In a running battle, one of the most important instruments is the interphone.
There's 4 of them. 1 o'clock high.
They're coming around. Watch it.
2 fighters, 6 o'clock up, coming in. Diving out, Chief.
B-17 in trouble out at 2 o'clock, watching.
Got an engine on fire.
There's 2 more diving through the 94th.
3 planes, 9 o'clock, coming around. Keep your eye on them, boy.
Coming around to 10.
Watch them, Chuck. Keep your eyes open.
Yeah.
They're breaking at 11, breaking at 11.
I got them. I got those 2 at 2 o'clock.
Watch them, Scotty.
I got my sights on them.
Check that B-17, Chuck, 3 o'clock. Motor smoking. Fighters, 10:30, coming around.
Those 10:30 upper or lower? B-17 out of control at 3 o'clock.
Come on, you guys, get out of that plane. Bail out.
There's one. He come out of the bomb bay.
Yeah, I see him.
There's a tail gunner coming out.
Watch out for fighters. Keep your eye on them, Bill.
See any parachutes, Quinlan?
2 parachutes. Flag at 9 o'clock.
8 men still in that B-17.
Come on.
Get out of there.
There's 3 more chutes.
Flag, 11 o'clock.
Fighters, 6 o'clock.
ME-109 at 3 o'clock.
Keep after him, would you?
I see him. I'm on him. Come on, you. I got him.
Quinlan, confirm that fighter.
He got him, Chief. Look, he's bailing out.
Don't yell on that intercom. fighters, 10 o'clock.
Watch those 2 at 12, Ben. They're coming in.
They're coming in, Scotty.
Get that ball turret on them.
Save the ammunition as much as possible.
Watch that fighter coming in at 3 o'clock.
He's coming in a half roll. Pull her up, Chief. Pull her up.
This fortress is hurt. Engine on fire, losing airspeed and altitude, drifting into the flak, alone and helpless. A straggler. In a minute, Nazi fighters will swarm in like buzzards for the kill. You can watch, but you can't go down to help. You keep your formation.
Here, too, the mission is being flown. None the less real for being in the minds and hearts of these men behind. Ask anybody who's been to a field in England, or anywhere else our bombers are based, and he'll tell you that there's drama here, too. Waiting to see who's coming back. To watch them, you might not realize how tense these ground crews are. But they are tense, and plenty worried. In Air Force talk, this waiting is known as sweating a mission. These men know the flight plan. Their watches told them when the bombers were running into enemy flak, when they were over the target, when they left the enemy coast. And now their watches tell them the bombers should be nearing the field. Every ear strains for the first sound of the engines. And then somebody hears them. And somebody sees the first faint specks in the distant sky. Every face turns to see and count. The watchers try to read the numbers on the ships. These planes have priority to land first. The colored flares mean wounded aboard. In the hospital window, these watching men know what that means. They know what it feels like to lie on a bouncing fortress floor for hundreds of miles through the frozen stratosphere in great pain, with the other men in your crew fighting to keep you alive until they hit the field. The field. Home. It'll be okay then, because there'll be medical care. The best, as soon as the wheels of your plane stop rolling. .20-millimeter cannon shell exploded in his radio compartment. Shock. Internal injuries. He'll be all right, though. Flak burst scattered flying shrapnel. He's full of steel splinters. This pilot's leg is not a pretty sight. Neither are the docks at Wilhelmshaven. These men will all get the Purple Heart. And this man, too, posthumously. A transfusion right in the plane. This gunner's too weak to be moved. The new life-giving blood flowing into his veins might be the blood of a high school girl in Des Moines, a miner in Alabama, a movie star in Hollywood, or it might be your blood. Whosever it is, thanks. 36 planes left this field this morning. Now 6 more arrive. That makes 20 home. And this one's 21. More wounded aboard. .22, coming in with his left inboard engine dead. .23, with a feathered prop on his left outboard engine. .24, Southern Comfort, with a chunk of tail gone. .25, they flew home on their luck. .26, not a scratch. The control tower learns that 2 more landed at a British field to the south. 1 a crash landing, crew safe. That makes 28. 29. A rough landing, but her pilot's badly hurt. It's a wonder he brought her back at all. 29 planes back, so far. 29 out of 36. Our losses were heavy, but the enemy's were far heavier. We destroyed a German aircraft factory, a rail junction, submarine pens, docks, and harbor installations. That's specific, known damage. But who can tell the number of German torpedoes that will not be fired, the number of our convoys that will get through now, the soldiers' and seamen's lives that will be saved, or the battles that will be won instead of lost, because of what these bombers and airmen did today. Pilot and tail gunner. They can laugh now. Fire on the inboard engine did this. Flames streaked back and burned the stabilizer, too. Another crew luck brought back. Here's old Bill. A pretty good airplane when it took off. Lost its nose, lost its navigator, bombardier wounded, top turret gunner and pilot hit. Hydraulic system shot out, no brakes, no flaps. But old Bill came back. Now, among the returned crew members, talk flows like a river, talking out every detail of the mission. These are the faces of combat, faces of Americans who have watched their comrades die, faces that can never forget the enemy, and they're in no mood to have their picture taken. In the control tower, Colonel Ray, the group CO, is still watching and waiting. And then he spots the last flight. 3 more planes. And one of them is the ship everyone has been pulling for.
The Memphis Belle. The last few miles of this trip have been a joyride. The strain is over. They can leave their guns now. Now they know they're going to go home. To Spokane, Green Bay, Asheville, Detroit, Chicago, Fort Worth, and Yonkers. The Belle comes in for her landing. But first Morgan buzzes the field, cuts the grass with the giant fortress. It's against the rules, but this is a special occasion. The wheels of the Memphis Belle come back to the soil of England for the 25th time. a day they will never forget. Another great day soon after, Brigadier General Hansel visited the field and presented the Distinguished Flying Cross to every member of the crew. And then there was another day. Their Majesties, the King and Queen of England. Johnny Quinlan never thought anything like this would happen to him when he left Yonkers. The ground crew were a little self-conscious about being dressed in fatigues, but the Queen thought they were very nice. Finally, two more visitors came. General Acre, commanding the 8th Air Force, and General Debers, U.S. commander of the European Theater. The Bell crew received them in flying clothes. As General Acre read the order for their 26th and most important mission, return to America to train new crews and to tell the people what we're doing here, to thank them for their help and support, and tell them to keep it up so we can keep it up, so we can bomb the enemy again and again and again until he has had enough. And then we can all come home. The 8th Air Force, who are now flying deep into Germany, bringing destruction to targets almost 1,000 miles from their bases. Destruction like this. And who have never once been turned back by the enemy.
The picture you are about to see was taken from Air Force Combat Film Digest. It tells a story of the vital contribution made by the Army Air Forces to victory in the Pacific. Since December 7th, 1941, the world has decreased in size and its shape has been considerably altered. This phenomena, which has brought disaster to our enemies, will remain as a lasting tribute to the skill of American aviation, its workers, and the personnel of the Army Air Forces. In less than 4 years, the distance around the world has been spanned thousands upon thousands of times. Places that were once obscure specks on the map have become bywords in every home in the land as they were bombed, rebombed, and blasted out of existence until victory was won. The Army Air Forces played an important part in winning the war. It is equally important to ensure our winning the peace that America remain what it is today, the leading air power in the world. You and every American can play your part in maintaining the freedom and security for which we have all fought by buying and holding bonds.
War comes to Japan, Leh, Salamaua, New Guinea.
We start for Tokyo.
The Aleutian Islands.
We start from another direction.
China, where there was never enough of anything to fight with, except Japs.
We kept trying.
Just another one of 100 blobs of land to retake in the Pacific. Wake Island.
We got it back.
Burma, penetrated by the airborne infantry of every nation.
Practically nothing stopped us.
On the road to the Philippines, Hollandia. Obscure names on the map of the world that were blasted out of existence.
And for every bomb, every bullet, and every dead Jap, we paid.
We paid for a global war under conditions that hardly seem possible now. We paid with endless supplies and materiel. And our men fought and sweated and labored endlessly to advance the bomber line. That was the watchword in the Pacific. To advance the bomber line.
To advance the bomber line to Tokyo. Not just from the dank malarial-infested jungles, but from the ice and snow and solitude of the north. Advance the bomber line. Get the planes in the air. Destroy the Japs.
American supplies from a nation mobilized for war. Supplies of every size, shape, and description. Supplies destined for China after being shipped halfway around the world. Supplies for a global war, flown to their final destination by the Army Air Forces. This was more than a fight against the Japs. It was a fight against time and the elements. But finally, all over the Pacific and the Far East, our time began to arrive.
The supply line that stretched halfway around the world served its purpose. From the airstrips that had been hacked out of the jungles, the Army Air Forces gave the infantry the one thing they lacked for so long: air-ground support. Fighter aircraft swooped down to destroy the enemy. Here in central Burma, 90 miles southwest of Mandalay, is just one example of the thousands of times that air-ground support catapulted our advances forward. In this instance, air power was used to clear the way for a push south to Rangoon and win that port for our own forces. P-47s in the 1st Air Commando Group were used to aid the British infantry to cross the Irrawaddy River and establish a beachhead. The air action ranged in a 50-mile radius. The pilots, guided by intelligence reports, were in constant communication with ground installations. They bombed and strafed everything the Japanese had so carefully installed. What would have taken months of hand-to-hand fighting and heavy casualties was accomplished in a matter of days. And even as this beachhead was consolidated, it was clear that the British-American air-ground coordination would push the Japs out of Burma.
This is an emergency hospital located 7 miles behind the front lines in northern Burma. General Stilwell watches as Chinese casualties are brought in to be treated by Lieutenant Colonel Gordon Seagrave, the famous Burma surgeon, and his staff of Army doctors and Burmese nurses. Because of the constant presence of snipers, most of the wounded were brought in during the night. They made the 7-mile trip from the front lines over jungle trails in crude man-carried litters. This base, like many others, was supplied with medical equipment and plasma by the Army Air Forces. The wounded men, after being treated, were carried an additional 14 miles to a landing strip where they were flown back to a general hospital at Lido, a trip that would take 15 days by foot. The Army Air Forces made it in 1 hour and saved the lives of countless soldiers of the United Nations who were patched, mended, and revivified by the combined miracles of modern medicine and air power.
No sooner was a new base secured in the Pacific when the same relentless, monotonous tasks began all over again. At Saipan, supplies, equipment, engineers followed in the wake of the invasion forces to make the island operational for the Army Air Forces. Work began even while the freshly wounded men were still being evacuated to Kwajalein. Just a few short days ago, these men had left Kwajalein whole and ready for battle. Now they were going back to where they had started from. The victory at Saipan had been a costly one. But the enemy had been made to pay double. Once more, the potency of air power manifested itself. One of the strongest Jap bases in the Pacific had been reduced to rubble. The Japanese warlords knew now that soon no part of the homeland would be safe.
Then began one of the miracle jobs of the Pacific, a job that had to be completed within hours of the time it was begun, to rebuild and lengthen the newly captured airstrip to accommodate the weapon that was eventually going to win the war.
It's history now how the job was accomplished. And out of the vast stretches of the Pacific roared the mightiest bomber the Army Air Forces had ever dreamed about, the B-29 Super Fortress, with the dust of the Kansas plains still embedded in the shiny silver wings. This was the bomber that was designed to carry the war directly to Japan itself. The zenith of the long-range plans for victory in the Pacific was in sight.
However, there was an obstacle in our path. It was called Iwo Jima. We needed this tiny stretch of land for many reasons. As a fighter base, as an emergency landing field for B-29s returning from missions over Japan, and also because it was filled with Japanese aircraft that had to be eliminated before we started on the road to Tokyo.
Using Iwo Jima as a base, the Japs attacked Saipan at every opportunity. And we shot them out of the sky as fast as they came over. They hit us, too. Hit men. In the painstakingly built airfield. And B-29s. Reasons enough to make the step that followed.
So, we had to take Iwo Jima, no matter what the cost was. When the smoke and the fire and agony and the dying was over, this is what was left. But Iwo Jima was ours. The fighter planes on its airstrip were ours. And the B-29s had their emergency landing field. The road to Tokyo was wide open.
Guadalcanal, New Guinea, Rabaul, and Tarawa were left behind now as the Army Air Forces began to systematically destroy vital targets of the stolen Japanese Empire. In Borneo, the valuable oil supplies at Balikpapan and surrounding vicinity were subjected to devastating aerial bombardments. These were long, dangerous missions, but they were worth it. The major supply of fuel for the Japanese war machine was destroyed, and the enemy on Borneo was softened up for the inevitable invasion that followed the heavy air attacks. The high-geared Japanese war machine was slowed down to a walk.
Even as the B-29s from Saipan began flying missions against Japan itself, other portions of the Army Air Forces were spearheading the attacks against the Philippines. Here the Japs were firmly entrenched. But here again, they were made to feel and realize the potency of air power. The Japs had done a lot of damage to our bases in the Philippines in 1941. When General MacArthur said he would return, he didn't mean that he'd come empty-handed. The Army Air Forces had delivered the goods prepaid. The recapture of the Philippines and the liberation of its long-suffering people is just part of the archives now. And General Douglas MacArthur has reached his goal to avenge Bataan and Corregidor.
There was still another base we paid to secure. Okinawa. On a nearby island rests one more soldier.
But Okinawa, too, was soon operational. General Doolittle arrived from the European theater and assumed command of the redeployed 8th Air Force.
The stage was set, and General Arnold, commander of the Army Air Forces, flew to a far eastern base to discuss the knockout blow with Generals Kenny and Whitehead.
The bomber line had advanced to Tokyo at last. And what a bomber line. 400 plane raids, 500, 600, 1,000. The island hopping, the naval battles, the hand-to-hand fighting of the Marines and infantry were all paying off at once. Japanese aircraft production was reduced 50% within a space of weeks. Japanese shipping was slashed to shreds, and their war plants were systematically eliminated. The superfortresses rained a constant stream of destruction and were accompanied on their missions by strong fighter escorts to protect them. Tokyo, Kobe, Nagasaki, Yokohama, Curie, and every other major city of Japan was bombed and rebombed by the B-29s. Entire cities were destroyed, while others were left smoking and paralyzed. Millions of Japanese were forced to flee. In these final days of the war, air power and air power alone was bringing a nation to its knees.
It remained for air power and air power alone to finish the job. One day, August 5th, 1945, one B-29 left on a special mission. One airplane that represented the people of the United Nations and the millions who had lost their lives. One airplane that represented millions of man-hours of labor and billions of dollars of American money. That airplane carried the atomic bomb, and its destination was Hiroshima.
A city in ruins with one bomb. This was the first test of the atomic bomb in New Mexico.
Nagasaki destroyed a few days later with a second atomic bomb, so much more powerful that the first one was already obsolete.
On August 14th, 1945, the Pacific War was over.
Japan surrendered unconditionally, simply by pressure from a distance.
That pressure was air power, the strongest air power the world had ever known. It remains for the people of the United States to keep it that way.
Now we know where we're going.
Did you get that about those snakes? I don't mind Japs, but snakes.
How did the skipper say it? Okie.
I heard him. He said Okinawa.
You know, they say this place looks like the country around Frisco.
Yeah, but the people look like Japs.
Frisco? They don't like it up in San Francisco when you call it Frisco. Spent my honeymoon up there. Drove up from L.A. Made it in 8 hours. 400 miles.
8 hours? What was holding you back? I used to make it from Buffalo to New York in 6 flat. That's 370 miles with hills.
370 miles. Why, right here, we're closer to Japan than that. We're just 325 miles from their home office.
325 miles. You heard him. That's what the old man said. 325 miles. Boy, that's closer than Milwaukee to St. Louis. I always felt pretty safe in St. Louis.
It's awfully close. Mighty close.
Yes, mighty close. Especially for a modern bomber with a job to do. About an hour's run from any number of Jap airfields. But here we were, closer than any fleet in history to a major land-based air power. At Midway, in the Coral Sea, even in the Marianas, distance had been against the Japanese Air Force. But now, as our fleet sailed against the enemy inner islands, the range was easy for any Jap plane that could fly. There were those who said no fleet could risk it, but the stakes were high. With Okinawa in our hands, we could control the China coast, send swarms of planes to smother Japan. We were reaching for the throat of an empire. The risk must be taken. On the island of Okinawa, 5,000 miles from San Francisco, the earth shook from a fearful pounding by our ships and planes. To the south, our British allies were hurling their naval might at the bypassed fortress of Formosa. They were raking Sakashima with shell and bomb. England's greatest battleships and newest carriers were there, screening us on the south, paying off with pleasure an old debt to Nippon. On the northern flank, Admiral Mark A. Mitcher's tireless Task Force 58 stepped up its 2 weeks old aerial assault on Kyushu and the enemy home islands. It was the 4th of July in reverse, on Japanese shipping, harbors, airfields, factories. There's a Jap carrier in trouble. Men of the Navy, 400,000 men, called it Love Day. Elsewhere in the world, it was Easter Sunday, 1945. At 8:30 that morning, the Marines and the Army went in. "100,000 Yanks were rattling the lock on Japan's front door. They were plowing sacred soil with American boots, tractors, tanks. The first 7 days were baffling, mysteriously quiet. Ashore, Army and Marines pushed steadily forward, looking for an enemy which had vanished. On the 1,400 ships supporting the invasion, men waited at their battle stations and waited. We knew the blow would come, but how and when? Then it struck. They call it kamikaze, meaning the divine tempest. We call them suicide planes, manned by pilots wearing the ceremonial red sash of the kamikaze corps. They specialize in one-way trips. Their destination, the deck or hull of any American ship onto which plane, bombs, burning gasoline, and red-sashed pilot can crash. Japan's secret weapon was no secret to our gunners or our flyers, who for months had been tinting the far Pacific with those same red sashes. But now, to meet our latest challenge, our deepest thrust, there rose every plane that could fly, new or old, from the very heart of Japan itself. 16-year-olds, still in aviation schools, were given their wings, a sash, and a mission. It was a maniacal, all-out effort to smash our sea power, isolate our troops on Okinawa. It was desperation. It was suicide. But it would be the pattern from now on to the very finish. A struggle between men who want to die and men who fight to live. He's hit, but he's still heading for the target. Missed. Night it went on. Hundreds of land-based planes streaked low over the sea at our carrier. drove out of the dawn, raced through dull overcast to throw themselves in screaming, smoking fury at Admiral Richmond Kelly Turner's ships off Okinawa. Again, the old battleships were there, and new ships of the line. And a rugged little man named Ernie Pyle. There was no retreat. This was the fleet that came to stay, that had to stay. Had to stay because the men that the Navy landed needed tons of steel from Navy guns. Even as we beat off fresh waves of Jap planes overhead, the big guns of the fleet smashed enemy strongholds miles away. Had to stay because our men advancing through the rice paddies and over the steep ridges had to have close air support from the baby flat tops. In the air control room aboard the command ship, strike upon strike was ordered. Then the Navy and Marine flyers laid down precise, deadly rocket fire to help make the next 50 yards of advance less costly. This was the fleet that had to stay because always the stream of supplies to those troops must be steady and huge. A bridge of ships was thrown across the Pacific to bring our men more food, more medicine, more ammunition. And waiting at the end of the longest supply route in any war were the kamikazes. It was weird. It was savage. This was a fleet fighting like infantry, punching away at the enemy. Only there are no foxholes in the ocean.
March 18th to the 21st, 556 Japanese planes destroyed.
Men fought without sleep. Some fought with guns. Some with axes, torches. Some with fire-smothering foam. It was fix and fight at the same time. Many fell at their battle stations, and some were buried. give up the ship became more than a schoolbook legend. It became a fact of life. April 13th brought more planes and shocking news. Between attacks, weary men, afloat and ashore, paid honor to the beloved figure in the blue Navy cloak, said farewell to the father of the modern American Navy. Then they turned and met the next assault. During 3 fabulous months, thousands of aircraft were hurled against our ships. But only 10% ever slipped through our air patrol. Yet the siege by air went on. The Japanese beast still spat zeros.
April 6th, 277 enemy planes shot down. April 12th, 100 planes. May 3rd, 97.
In the early gray hours of the morning watch on May 9th, the great news came. VE Day in Europe. It came first to the lookouts, to the men who stand guard while the others sleep. Men were glad and grateful. Home seemed a little nearer. But for now, VE Day was simply the 1,247th day of our Pacific War. From the rolling decks of our carriers, the fighters rose once again to intercept the enemy. On the cruisers and destroyers and battleships, our heavy batteries once more leveled against the Jap-studded hills of Okinawa. The barking 20s and 40s sent streams of fiery lead into the world's last alien sky.
May 12th, 164 Jap aircraft down. June 3rd, 45. June 6th, 67. June 8th, 30.
Week after vicious week, the most devastating air-sea battle of all time wore on. The Japanese paid with their Air Force, with their newest ships, 4,232 planes. The fleet that came to stay paid a price too. But our men, our ships, our planes took everything the land could throw at the sea and handed it back double. The question, could a fleet stand up against the massed fury of land-based planes, got an emphatic answer from the men who fight to live, from the fleet that came to stay.
American fighter planes based in England, operating in the skies of Western Europe against the German Air Force. This is the P-47, the Thunderbolt, A fast, tough, high-altitude fighter with a dive like its name and an 8-gun blast in its wings. Here is the Lightning, the P-38, master of the air in many theaters of war. The long range and concentrated firepower of this great fighter counted in Western Europe, too. The Mustang, the P-51, longest range fighter in the world. Speed, fast climb, quick dive, tight turn. A fighter pilot's dream. Into these three great fighters, America poured its genius, its millions of man-hours of labor, its faith in victory against the Luftwaffe. And in their single cockpits, it placed its carefully chosen sons, trained to a fighting edge, trained as never before. Here is their report, catch as catch could by their own gun cameras in the instant of action, and delivered in return for your toil and your treasure and your high hopes. This is a Thunderbolt base in East Anglia on the east coast of England. One of many such bases from which our fighter planes swarmed up into the far red yonder of battle to the east. Their main job, although they struck many other blows, was to escort and protect our heavy 4-engine bombers, the big friends, against the Focke-Wulf 190s, the ME 109s, and the enemy's rocket-lobbing twin engines, Ju-88s, ME 210s, 410s, and others. To attack them whenever, wherever, and in whatever strength they appeared. Our direct challenge for control of the air. Trucks bring the pilots from the field to the squadron dispersal hut for intelligence interrogation after the mission. Coffee and sandwiches if they want it. Little action today, just a routine escort.
You saw 4 190s on the field.
That's right. Kerry saw him, too.
I think it was this field, Jack, further west. We made the 180 here and flew about 2 minutes on 340.
Well, that's about 15 miles south of Hanover. We thought that field was knocked out.
They seem like ordinary American boys, but look a little closer. Now they pile in a Jeep and ride to chop. They have Jeeps enough, but they like it this way. They kid a lot, high-spirited. And later they relax and enjoy the not too frequent sunlight. Unless some joker is present, and he usually is. They keep pretty fit, ready to stand anything up to 7 hours in a single-seater in substratosphere, alert every second. And they keep their eye in. This fellow has 22 destroyed. Well, he may have if he keeps at it. And they won't be clay pigeons. The old swimming hole is the same in England as at home. They had a beautiful summer in England that day. Little aquatic practice won't hurt either. They may have to make a high dive with chute and become a channel swimmer almost any time. Of course, it gives their airborne pals a fine chance to practice low flying a bit. The swimmers take no chances on this buzz job. Maybe they're learning not to get behind the 8 ball here. Put the 6 in the corner. Getting in shape for Wimbledon in a small way. Good shot. Keep your eye on the little white ball, Eddie. Keeping up with their crooning, naturally. May need that in the good old by and by. Everybody's favorite newspaper in this town. What goes on in New Guinea, China, and Luzon? What's happening at home? Best of all is their comradeship. Fellows who are trusting one another with their lives in this teamwork war learn to be friends. Somewhere else in England, and another day, from deep sweeps into enemy territory, a weather reconnaissance plane flies in. Its reports are cross-checked with many others, writing the destiny of today or tomorrow in atmospheric pressure lines. Fair in this theater means not impossible, and weather is almost enemy number one. At 8th Air Force, General Doolittle discusses fighter protection.
The 8th Fighter Command will give fighter cover to targets and back from the targets. It's desirable that we peel off as many fighters as possible to come down east of the Ruhr and strafe ground targets. How many do you want to peel off?
Well, General, we're spreading over a pretty wide area there. I'd recommend very seriously that we hold all strafing to a minimum.
All right. Go ahead and send that over to the 8th Fighter Command.
Yes, sir.
The bomber plan, timing, altitudes, forces, course, and targets have reached the combat operations room at Headquarters 8th Fighter Command. Major General Kepner commanding. Now the General and his Chief of Staff, Brigadier General Griswold, come in to inspect and discuss the plan of escort. Colonel Burns, operations, determines what group shall fly. Colonel James decides their disposition. Colonel Callahan, intelligence, estimates where and when the enemy will intercept. It's an intricate scientific plan based upon information from many sources and upon the route and location of the target. Then a field order goes out to the fighter wings and through them to the fighter groups and squadrons which they control. This command supports 1st and 2nd Bomber Forces. 62nd Group P-47s will escort heavy bombers over enemy coast through target to limit of endurance. All observations will be reported over RT. The field order is received at the fighter base by the duty officer in group operations. He checks the field order for the group rendezvous time with the bombers. He calls maintenance, armament, and others. And in the still dark hours of the morning, a squadron intelligence officer shakes the pilots out of their deep sleep. Briefing at 6:30. Why can't they fight the war at a reasonable hour? Wake up over there if you want any breakfast. There's a show on. Crews, meantime, are warming and priming the aircraft. The crews are a vital part of this show. Tune their kites to fighting pitch. Going places as always, long-range wing tanks are fitted. Now briefing and everybody present. The colonel comes in. These fellows are veterans of many missions, so he gives them the essentials without ceremony.
Okay, boys, today we're going to escort 10 boxes of bombers, 36 ships to each wing. We're on the front end of the 1st Task Force, picking them up in the Mannheim area, around the target, about 20 miles east of Mannheim, at which time we will proceed up to the aerodromes north of Frankfurt, where we will strafe. Now today, I want to use the same system we used the other day. That is, dividing the field up into sections, one squadron only on the field at one time. When the ammunition is expended from that squadron, you'll move up and let the other top cover squadron come down and strafe.
Okay, boys, we'll start engines at 8:50, take off 8:58 to 9:06, rendezvous with the big friends 11:04, escort until 11:24, strafe until 12:16.
The pilots make notes on the back or palm of their left hands. No chance of losing that little memo in a moment of excitement, or not much chance.
Okay, any more questions? Intelligence?
Intelligence takes over.
Gentlemen, you may expect considerable enemy opposition today. The Germans have brought in some 100 single-engine fighters, chiefly 109s, some 190s, to stop the American drive across the Rhine. Watch your flank at the Rhine River, at Mannheim, and particularly in the Frankfurt area. Now, after you break escort, there are 4 aerodromes which we've marked in red pins. You're free to strafe those aerodromes, but watch out for the flag. There are probably about 30 guns on each airfield. Send a flight down to silence the guns before you attempt to hit the planes on the field.
Then time check. A minute is a long time for an air fighter. In 10 seconds, the time will be exactly 0658.
Good luck, man.
Surprised? These fellows know what's at stake. Each man takes his emergency kit and empties his pockets. A scrap of paper might tell a big story to enemy intelligence if he has to bail out. Last but not least, each pilot picks up his chute and rubber dinghy on the way out. 20 minutes before takeoff time, trucks bring the pilots to their planes. The group leader gives his own flight special instructions. Techniques are proven and fairly standard, but they're rugged individualists, these fighter boys, and each leader has a few ideas of his own. All right, let's get aboard. Helmet is not only for warmth, it holds radio earphones too. Oxygen mask contains the mic. No hands to spare on this one-man kite. Here this pilot will fly and fight in the icy substratosphere or dusting the treetops of Germany for anything from 4 to 7 hours. Oh, my aching back. All clear? Let's go. Takeoff by twos on the quarter minute. Element leader and his wingman. Expert takeoffs and landings are a point of pride with every squadron. While at other bases, timed to the escort schedule, the P-38s get underway. And at still others, here go the long-range Mustangs to keep their rendezvous with the big friends someplace deep in Germany. Somewhere out there over enemy territory, near or far on the long route as the bombers go out and come home, each of these fighter formations will make rendezvous with them at a certain point on the exact minute. These thunderbolts climb steadily over the channel and into hostile air. They keep fairly close together to prevent wandering and to save gas. That all-important item for the long-range escort fighter. He can't borrow a couple of coupons over Frankfurt or Cologne. Now they open up into battle formation, fairly line abreast. Each pair, leader and wingman, never willingly separated, is a combat element. 4 planes are a flight, 8 a section, 16 a squadron, 3 squadrons a group. All working together because it's teamwork every second or die. Just as simple as that. Close to rendezvous now, and in the distance are the bombers. Advanced formations of the perhaps 100-mile-long Armada. The Thunderbolts maneuver for their escort position. Each pilot searches the sky constantly, watching for the main enemy attack which may come near the coast or deep in Germany, or a hit-and-run sneak attack by the enemy's aerial snipers.
Red leader to outpost. Bogies at 10 o'clock level. Outpost to red leader. Your bogies look like friendly Spitfires.
But these black darts are not friendly.
This is red leader. All right, men on the ball. This is it. 109's at 9 o'clock. Yellow leader to outpost. 1 Fog Wolf coming in. Outpost to red leader. Can we get them? It's our turn, Chief. Red leader to outpost. White flight, drop tanks and attack. Red flight, stay up for cover. Yellow flight, continue to escort.
Red flight gets rid of its long-range wing tanks before the fight. Then down they go. The sneak attackers try to run for it now, but the Thunderbolts are on them. With the touch of the finger on the stick, a camera and 8 machine guns are put into action. Small cameras set on the wings make the record. Poor pictures due to gun vibration. But you see it when it happened, as the pilot saw it. Armor-piercing incendiary 50 caliber ammunition makes a flash when it strikes, and how it strikes. bombers, ready with their own guns for anything that slips through, didn't need them this time. All over now, just a skirmish, part of the escort routine. The flight reforms and climbs to regain its position with the rest of the squadron. In the distance, coming in to relieve the Thunderbolts is a group of Mustangs.
This is Red Leader. Okay, men, it's time to break escort. Mustangs coming in at 8 o'clock.
The Thunderbolts break escort. They head for home, watching for every possible strafing target on the way. The Mustangs, far in the distance, sweep the surrounding sky as they come in. Next to the belly or wing tank, which doubled the fighter range, the most important feature of long-range fighter escort was the relay system. Because of differences in bomber and fighter speeds and the need of much weaving, fighters used up their time and distance almost twice as fast as the bombers. Thus, the same group of fighters could remain with the bombers only 25 to 40 minutes out of a 6 or 8 hour mission, going and coming. And 1,000 fighters might be needed to keep anything from 40 to 100 on the job at all times. While the enemy could strike with 250 at any point he selected, our fighter groups had to relieve one another at rendezvous points all along the route, like this. Simple in diagram, but difficult in the limitless, often weather-blinded spaces of the enemy air. It took planning, leadership, and most of all, it took individual fighting skill and courage to match the enemy's tactical advantages. Forewarned an hour and a half by his radars, our bombers gained altitude over England, he had plenty of time to mass his fighters at his chosen point of attack and to outnumber our escort at anything from 2 to 1 to 10 to 1. This captured film shows how quickly the 109s and the Focke-Wulf 190s got into action. They were as grimly determined to stop these great daylight thrusts into their industrial heart as our bombers and fighters were resolved to press them home to the hilt. In Germany now, weaving ahead, above, below, and all around the bombers like a screen of destroyers protecting the main fleet, a group of escorting Mustangs watches every corner of the sky. They don't have long to wait. Ceaseless training plus battle experience has taught them to recognize the enemy almost by instinct, where they are, how they act. First hostile aircraft is spotted.
Blue Leader here. Watch it, fellows. 109 to 10 o'clock.
The enemy fighters are massing for an attack on the bombers while our pilots watch every move of their very tactics.
Yellow Leader to Blue Flight. Looks like they're trying to lead us away from the bombers. Green Leader here. You're right. Here comes another, 9 o'clock.
Blue Leader here. Blue Flight drop tanks. Yellow and Green Flight stay up for cover.
The Mustangs drop wing tanks and plunge into the fight. The head-on dive through the fortress's formation is a favorite. So fast sometimes, and so many, our fighters cannot head all of them off. The Huns make a sneak attack on our bombers from behind. Some of them get in close, as this captured enemy gun camera film shows, and hammer our bombers with their 20 millimeters. It's punishing, but they shall pay. The Mustangs are in the thick of it, and the battle ranges all over the sky as other formations join in. Jerry's attack in waves and sometimes inflict great damage before they're driven off. A B-17 catches fire and goes down in flames. The German pilots are determined. So are ours. To the death. Tail shot off, but still going ahead. And still they come. We lose another, but they cannot stop us. Our fighters, often heavily outnumbered, engage the enemy all over the sky. And this battle is only one of many. Day after day, month after month, Mustang, Thunderbolt, Lightning against the ME-109s and the FW-190s. Our fighters attacked, attacked, attacked. 2 into 10, 6 into 50. They broke up the enemy's mass assaults. Then his shattered flights were pounced upon and destroyed individually. Our victory column soared at the rate of 4 to 1. Great and gallant days they were. Many new aces, many empty places. Victory, victory, death, victory, victory. While our ever-increasing fleets of fortresses and liberators pressed relentlessly onto their targets, whenever attacked, they defended themselves with legendary gallantry and effectiveness. If a missed rendezvous or other misadventure, due usually to blinding weather, prevented fighter protection somewhere, they suffered heavy losses. But no American fighter ever failed them because of enemy odds, however great. Never was a mission turned back by enemy action. Our bomber and fighter losses, though strikingly less than the enemy's, were heavy. But the home front sent us more bombers and fighters, and more well-trained pilots, and our fleets grew mightier by the month. But the enemy first-line operational strength was maintained also. The great air battle of Europe was still undecided. In February 1944, there was a sudden change. Our fighters were ordered to range wider, even at some risk to the bombers, to seek the enemy instead of waiting for him, and above all, to follow him to his destruction. A gigantic fighter battle raged across the European skies with victories by our fighters alone of 60, 85, over 100 destroyed each day. The fight came down from almost invisible heights to the final decision, perhaps only a few feet above the ground. Enemy warplanes of every kind and in fantastic numbers were splashed all over the landscape of northwestern Germany and occupied Holland, Belgium, France. Watch this 190 hit the dust. crucial battle. Both sides aware of the coming events and air domination itself at stake. Once again, a better cause, better planning and leadership, better equipment, and beyond everything else, the know-how valor of our fighter pilots gave us victory. Only this time it was decisive. So many of his aircraft exploded over his own forests and housetops, or were driven, flaming wrecks, into the ground. So many of his famous fighter leaders met death at the hands of some grimly determined boy from Illinois, or Wyoming, or wherever, that his morale was shattered. His defense plan was smashed. The Luftwaffe cried, "Enough." And the day arrived when a huge 8th Air Force bomber mission with full fighter escort was flown to Berlin and back in good weather without challenge by a single enemy fighter. Quickly now, our long-range escort fighters seized their opportunity. Since the enemy did not come up to fight, down they went to blast his planes to pieces and burn them on his own aerodromes all over Western Europe in the very heart of Germany. It was the most savage and devastating fighter ground attack on record. Returning from unchallenged escort duty and on many special missions, they burned his aircraft by hundreds, harried him from one airfield to another, forced on him a degree of dispersal ruinous to his efficiency. His frequently intense light flak, sheets of machine gun fire from flak towers and ground installation caused losses, heavy ones, 4 times as many as the same number of fighters would sustain in aerial combat. These are the films of the victors, and they do not show the cost. But our fighters never flinched, and by their fine courage facing destruction in single-engine planes only a few feet above the ground, 500 miles from their bases, they smashed the heavily concentrated front-line operational strength of the German Air Force forever. These jerry revetments could be attacked only through the front door. These copied Allied Invasion Day stripes failed to deceive our pilots. The enemy often dispersed his aircraft in the woods fringing his airdromes. Always open season on this kind of sitting duck. Watch this boy reef it around for another crack. The steady, relentless bombing of Germany went on without ceasing. Against the enemy's occasional desperate efforts to intercept, we maintained fighter escort every step of the way. But the sky was ours, and another great opportunity was ours. His teeming, widespread, intricate transportation system. Feeding and supplying the great armies which he counted upon to throw our invasion forces back into the sea. Then something happened. The enemy's roads and railroads were struck with a mighty force of air power. They were tense days, crucial days, and both sides knew it. Our fighters, freed by their bitterly won victory in the air, became a dominant factor on the ground. These thunderbolts are dive bombing. They strike home. But by far the greatest, the almost paralyzing destruction they inflicted was by the burning, hard-hitting fire of their 50 caliber guns. They exploded locomotives by the thousand and burned freight cars in uncounted numbers. No train in daylight hours was safe. No marshalling yard a haven. The enemy's desperately needed rail transport system was shattered all over the map. Tank goes up, one of many. No mistaking gasoline when you hit it. Too small, even a single railroad car. The Hun tried to hide his trains in the woods, but it did not save them. His diversion of traffic to slow-moving barges was no escape. The hail of our fighter fire swept the canals. Flak towers like these cause us lots of damage. They took plenty in return. Radio and radar stations came in for a special beating. Flak and machine gun defense was forced upon the enemy wherever he hoped to move. It was intense. Watch these bursts of light flak. Much of it our skillful pilots knew how to avoid. Some of it cost us grievous losses. None of it turned us aside. enemy ammunition tried to run the gauntlet in vain. Watch this staff car of a high German officer. Was it Rommel? Could be. At the same time came such a scourge of road traffic as never before known. The enemy could move his convoys effectively only at night, was delayed and destroyed wherever he turned the wheel. What did this mean to the German armies in the West? How did it count on Invasion Day and the Battle of Normandy? Here is the picture of the enemy's transportation system as he was able to take it into the crucial test. Yes, this is the report our fighter pilots send back to you. The great armadas of our bombers sailing unhindered through the enemy air. Our gallant armies driving ahead without having to keep one eye cocked over their shoulders. Their gun emplacements unobserved. Everywhere above the mighty battle was and is the flash of American fighters. The Thunderbolt, the Lightning, the Mustang. The Germans see them deep in their own sky and cringe. Our men see them above the grim fight and cheer. There are remembered names in the mess halls. Major Gerald Johnson, a crack shot. Major Goodson, gallant fighter. Major Dwayne Beeson, great tactician. Captain Eugene O'Neill, one of the best. Major Don Gentili ran up a flaming record. Colonel Don Blakesley, great leader of 4th Group. Major Walker Mahurin, one of the first and best of the great aces. Major Bob Johnson and all his victories. Lieutenant Colonel Gabreski, with a great career. And Colonel Hubert Zemke, famous commander of 56. A score of victories or more on the records of them all. Duncan, Schilling, Pretty, and many, many others. But this is not the story of our heroes. It belongs to all our gallant fighter pilots who in the decisive hour smashed the Luftwaffe and gave us freedom of the air.
Here is the famous Berlin Sleeper on its way to raid Frosinone Aerodrome near Rome. The 103 bombing missions of this remarkable fortress include targets in France, Holland, Belgium, Tunisia, Italian Libya, Pantelleria, Sardinia, Sicily, and Italy. The Sleeper is now back in the States. Moving day for the 321st Bombardment Group brought thunderstorms, heavy showers, and mud. Planes, tractors, and men were bogged down to a snail's pace by the weather conditions. But in the 48 hours allotted for the job, the camp was torn down, equipment and supplies loaded and packed, and the movement completed. They used C-47 cargo planes and their own B-25s. 24 hours after they landed in Italy, the group flew their first mission. Thunderbolt crews at a fighter station of the 8th Air Force in Great Britain are detailed to escort flying fortresses on a bombing mission over Nazi Europe. While the pilots are briefed, ground crews have prepared the P-47s, loading machine gun ammunition, testing the guns, filling the auxiliary tanks for long range. These squadrons are leaving for the front, the great air front over Western Europe. they rendezvous at the appointed time and place with the heavy bombers. And here are the heavies, giant flying fortresses that drop their tons of high explosives on pinpoint targets. As an attack by German Messerschmitts and Focke-Wulfs is about to develop, the Thunderbolts peel off to intercept, to protect their bombers. They have done their job well, turned back the Hun, while the bombers released their destructive cargoes. In the process, many enemy fighters were down. As soon as the pilot lands, his crew chief rushes up to hear the score. But in addition to the pilot's account, there's a film record of action when the guns were fired. This camera, shooting alongside the fighters' guns, can give us precise evidence of what happened in the sky battle we've just seen. This roll of film will be rushed to the developer, and here's the story it tells. A good day's hunting by a Thunderbolt. On the River Seine, halfway between Le Havre and Paris, is today's target, Le Trait. Objectives are power plants, boiler houses, repair shops, and shipyards. 36 B-26s took off, 33 attacked, protected by 11 squads of Spitfires. Workshops were hit with 40 tons of bombs. All vessels docked here were set afire as 4 other fighter squads swept the area. This was an extremely successful bombing mission, since there were no losses or casualties for our side. On a mission over Saint-Nazaire, a fortress is attacked as she completes her bombing run. Hit fatally and engine smoking, the ship plummets down and crashes into the sea, a flaming comet. On a frosty English morning, an 8th Air Force crew trots to its plane, its engines turning over. The famous Memphis Belle. They move down the line in their regular order. A mighty armada of flying fortresses is taking off in a major daylight raid against northern Germany. They're going to strike at the heart of the enemy, Wilhelmshaven, a big naval base just west of the Danish peninsula. As they pass over the Frisian Islands, the windows are winking in the sun. Crossing over the continent, they approach the target. The Germans light hundreds of smoke pots to hide the harbor installations, but they're too late. This heavy flak indicates how important the target is. Bombs away! Now interceptors charge in. A battle royal takes place over the harbor. 909 flashes by. The air is full of flak and Focke-Wulfs and flying forts. Hits have been scored on ships, docks, and warehouses. The destruction is terrific. Continual German interception at the height of the bombing, trying every kind of attack. A stricken American Eagle drops out of formation, fading fast. But as the fortresses leave the smoking target behind, they resume formation, filling in gaps for the planes that won't make the round trip. Feathering its prop, this fortress limps back. At long last, home base. The mission has been completely successful, but we paid the price in men and materiel, and both must be replaced from home. This bombardier got a piece of shrapnel when the nose of the fortress was blown away in exchange for the several tons of bombs left in Wilhelmshaven.
But the sky was ours. The steady, relentless bombing of Germany went on without ceasing.